Hello everyone, Jeff here, and today I have joining me Loco.
Ahoy, ahoy, everyone.
And today we're going to be taking a look at some of the new content that we've been adding to Antilia recently. Now there was it's been a few weeks since the last video. I was on a vacation for any of those curious why there wasn't a video. But I'm back now and getting back to work on Antilia, so let's go ahead and take a little bit of a look around. I've been very busy bringing in a lot of these kind of commercial assets that we've purchased, bringing them into the toy engine and getting them to render in Antilia. And what I thought we'd do is Loco and I'll be walking the character around, and we'll just kind of discuss some of these things that we've imported, ways that we might change them to make them fit a little bit more the alien world of Antilia, and just some of our plans and some brainstorming for them. So if we take a look at some of these, they're kind of too low res to make much bigger. These are kind of best suited for things like clutter, not interactive too much.
Although these cyan mushrooms are sufficiently alienish and could be used in some sort of potion making.
Yeah, some of these will probably be used for clutter. Others, yeah, if they make sense, we'll definitely try and make a proper game object out of them that you can harvest from and everything. This might be a good example of a feature I've added, though. You'll notice that we've got a bunch of different mushrooms here. This is actually one game object that's been placed numerous times, and one of the cool things we've done is add this new kind of like variation system, which works really well with these mushrooms since a lot of the assets we purchase come with variants. And maybe we can see we'll see Better's example of that as we look around. Yeah, these blue and purple ones, I'll probably separate these. I have them kind of clumped together at the moment, but I think some of these could actually be kind of useful as potion making ingredients, especially that purple one with the swirl on the top. It's so distinctive. I rather like that one. And I don't suspect all of these will end up on the northern island. When we first start out, maybe most of them will, just because, you know, if we've got the resources, we might as well put them to use. I'm kind of thinking maybe use color as a visual cue, because, you know, when the player's walking around and they come across a mushroom, how do they know this is one that they can take versus one that's static? The way I've seen some games do that is you kind of like have little ones that you can't take, but if it gets to a certain size, then you can take them.
Size as a visual indicator works.
So you can kind of see the variation thing going on here. There's 5 of them placed, and they get slightly different looks. These are kind of a very iconic mushroom. I'd definitely be tempted to change the color just because it's a little too iconic. These blue ones are interesting. I think I'd be tempted to change the color on them, honestly.
Although this deep blue is kind of appealing to me, but then again, I don't like blue. But the shape and the overall like feel from these mushrooms is like alienish enough, just as these on the left.
They definitely have a nice detailed textures to them, which I really like. I really like these on the left just because of some of the variations have I don't know, they're just cool the way they branch and stuff.
Yeah, these brown on the left would serve as clutter a bit as well.
Yeah, they're not quite high resolution enough that we could scale them up much larger. We could. I don't mind the idea of there being larger mushrooms in Antilia than just, you know, tiny little ones like this. So, same with these. They have enough detail in them with the geometry that you can make them a little larger if we wanted. Not necessarily going to full mushroom forest size where they're the size of trees, but, you know, that size or a little larger is fine.
I think if you had several of the mushrooms to be like twice the size of the Type E, that would be sufficient enough.
Yeah, and I think some of these would, like these red ones here, I think they would work well at that size even. Too much bigger, you do start to see that there is facets to them. So they could probably be about the size of a Type E and it would, you know, look appropriate. These to me really kind of beg for a retexture or a recolor. They both look a little bland to me. And then this, I'm not sure if this is really supposed to be a mushroom, and yes, it is a bit broken. There's parts that are floating here. I've determined that there's something still a little wrong with the FBX importer not rotating things properly, so I'm going to have to sort that out. obviously for the most part it's working, but there is some files that seem to have this particular glitch, and we'll see more examples of that later. This as well, I kind of feel we could use this. This is like kind of a swampy thing. I think we could use this though, this bramble kind of thing. Even in its current coloring, it's kind of useful, I think.
Yes, it looks scary, like something from a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but you know, it's got an alien quality to it. So, these little ones here, they kind of strike me as clutter. They could use a bit more color, maybe. These could even be larger, because if you look at them up close, all these little shoots, they actually get geometry, which is pretty cool. It isn't just a texture, it actually does extrude a bit. So I think these could easily be, you know, twice the size that they are now or something, and still hold up pretty well. And they're kind of the same as those over there, honestly. They're just, these have a curve to them and those don't. So they probably should be in one group. I would like to recolor those. I think the color scheme on that is kind of blah. And then there's these, which I really love these, but I would definitely suggest, we talked about this briefly the other day, that these are a good candidate to be recolored. And what I'd love to do with this is make them a little bit bigger and make them like a dark gray. And then instead of having the inky cap thing going on of these black ink coming off of it, I was thinking some sort of bioluminescent liquid would be coming off of it that would be really useful in potions and things. We talked about that a little bit the other day.
And we were making a bit of a joke how all of these glowing ingredients could make you yourself glow.
I was kind of thinking it'd be kind of funny if you drank this particular liquid, or any glowing liquid, maybe it would give you a status effect. It would make like your eyes and teeth or something glow. I think that'd be kind of amusing. And probably also give you like some night vision effect or something like that. This is a nice little kind of dense cluster. Probably mostly useful for clutter though. Although sometimes having some tall little mushrooms is nice too. So.
Oh, I like the purple on these mushrooms.
Yeah, these are nice little mushrooms. I like them. There's, from what I saw, there seems like there was another purple mushroom that I didn't get brought in here, which is a shame. Maybe in a future video. And there was also like a little cage style ball. That one looked really cool too, that it seems to be missing. Very alien. I think it'd be really suitable for Antilia. So we'll figure out where those went and figure out why they're not here. So there's kind of some small mushrooms. Some of these could be used kind of like for medium or large mushrooms. But quite a nice little variety. We'll do some retexturing on some of them. And next up we have a set of, I guess this is kind of like swamp stuff. I just started putting over here because they weren't mushrooms, but I still wanted a lot of these things. These stumps are floating a little bit, but I can fix that easily enough. So we got some kind of generic stumps. Since we're generating a lot of our own trees with the tree editor, I don't know if we could really use these stumps. Because we've got it working before, obviously, where you can cut down a tree and the tree falls over. Does it leave a stump behind? It'd be nice if it did, but it would also be nice if the stump matched the tree. And obviously these stumps are not going to match any of our trees unless we kind of retexture them. So some interesting meshes. I don't know necessarily if we'll get the use out of them that we want, but it's useful to have. Next we got some stones and some generic bushes. Just a quick note, some things like these large mushrooms and these big bushes I think would be real handy, especially if they have collision geometry associated with them, to try and create areas. One of the things we had in the MMO was basically this, open world effect where you can just walk anywhere. There were basically no boundaries in the overworld, and that's something I'd like to change. So having things like big mushrooms, big bushes and stuff, boulders that we can create some natural barriers out of, and encourage, walking around instead of just plowing straight through the middle of everything. I think that would make the travel around on the island more interesting if there's actual obstacles to navigate around.
And also these flattened stones could be used to create jumping puzzles if we implement jumping.
which I kind of have already implemented. Need some help, but yeah, I don't have collisions on any of these, but over there when we get to the white stones, I do have collisions on those. Got some interesting flowers. Obviously, this one's a little too recognizable. This is the flower everyone probably recognizes from social media that smells really bad. Dying corpse flower or something like that. Kind of a common name. I like these little geometric flowers. They're kind of cool look to them with that little window in them.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, this look like some sort of like a spiral.
Blue
Or
flowers.
even fractal.
Yeah.
Oh, these look nice.
Blue flowers, nice, simple. Here's some just ground leaf clutter. And there's a bunch more of this that I didn't bring in just because after you do a few of them, you kind of like, okay, I get it. There's going to be a lot of this. But very useful if we were creating swampy areas or areas with a lot of where we want like a leaf floor. So I'll probably port over more of this. There were just other things that were higher priority than getting a bunch of leaf clutter. But real useful, I think, for building scenes. And finally, one more flower here, which I kind of like those. I do love these rocks. I think they could have more scale variation. But with proper collision geometry, I mean, right now I can just walk through them, but with proper collision geometry, I think it's kind of interesting. They could definitely, we'll have to be a little careful that we don't create things like this where a player could fall in and you're stuck. Player getting stuck is something we're going to have to put some thought into, honestly. Because, you know, I think there's just going to be cases where it can happen.
The wall-like rocks could be used to create boundaries, like restrict the movement into areas we don't want player to move out.
And a lot of that will tie in. I think we've talked previously about the gameplay biomes using kind of like the landscape tool to create areas. I think having things like these rocks that we can put on the perimeter of these areas and then kind of like punch little doorways through the perimeter with another drawing layer. I can see that having a lot of potential where we could create little enclosed off areas that are surrounded by, you know, a bushy hedge or rocks like this. I think that would make things a lot more interesting than just a big open terrain with trees and not much else going on. So I'm really excited to see all this new content that we can bring in. We'll have to decide if we're going to make these collision things, or maybe some of them could be used even as like a stealth thing. You could get in here and go into stealth mode and be pretty much invisible, maybe. Here we have some more mushrooms, and this is like a lot of big mushrooms because they're higher resolution. They're more appropriate for making larger. This first one, I'll admit, I'm not a huge fan of. The color is kind of unappealing. I think with some work we can get good use out of this. I just have to figure out what color and what pattern we might want to put on it. And with most of these over here, these bigger ones, they come in a few varieties. They have like this wall variety that you can stick on a wall. They have the big groups and they have singles.
Well, the stacked ones look quite appealing, although the single ones not so much.
Again, I think these might be useful as a barricade as well, potentially. And if you really want to get crazy, we can make it into a platforming puzzle. But these, I actually really like these. I'm not terribly, I think the color could be a little more interesting, but I think the design of them would make for a decent, you could almost use it for like a forest or something if these were larger.
Or you can use them as umbrella.
Yeah. They have kind of a wall variation as well. It might be interesting to have like a big rocky valley of some sort and have the mushrooms in the base, but also on the walls around it. Could be useful. Moving on, we've got these kind of pokey ones. Again, I think it's a great mushroom. I'd like to see the colors a little more interesting. These two, I think they're kind of funny looking, but I think they're useful. I love the detail on the tops where even this is geometry. This kind of mushroom, if they're a bit bigger, you can make a little house in it or something maybe. So this is probably my least favorite, honestly. And it's got some issues. I mentioned the FBX importing issues coming in at wonky angles. So this is one of the ones that doesn't load very well, but I can sort that out. I I would definitely say we probably want to retexture these because they're pretty bland, if you ask me.
Yeah, they look very generic bullets.
Then we've got a shelf mushroom of this large tile, and I think this has a lot of potential too for platforming puzzles. Imagine again like a valley, a rocky valley, and having these all along the walls. You could put things up on the walls on top of the little platforms. I kind of wish I'd taken the time to put the collision on these. It would have been cool to be able to jump across a couple of them. I should mention the character's running a little bit fast compared to what it should be. And also the ocean is running black because I'm reworking the ocean so that it can support multiple water heights. So we're kind of turning features like reflections off and preparing for that. So over here we have some plants and rocks.
I definitely like the rocks.
So for those who haven't heard, the plan of the Northern Island, I am going to be changing to Northern Islands from what they are now. And we will be moving in the direction of using these white rocks instead of the volcanic black rocks we used around the Isle of Kassaw area. So we got collisions on these. Yeah, I like to rebuild it using this style rock for the Northern Islands. And I'm also probably going to change the grass color a little bit more to kind of tie in with it, maybe give it a bit of a blue tint. So all of these mushrooms are coming in on this mushroom project here. And you can see in the FBX importer section, all the FBX files I had to deal with. Just load this one here for a sample. And let's pick one of them. So you can kind of see, this is a new tool. This is the FBX importer. I don't think I've shown this yet to the public. So previously I was kind of like using a command line tool to convert meshes, and that was kind of insufficient. And one of the things that's really made all these getting all these meshes into the game possible is this new tool right here. And all it does is it lets you choose an FBX file, which is what you would export from something like Blender. And just it lets you kind of manage how the export is going to be handled. Lets you flip around geometry and test that everything looks properly, looks proper. So not a super detailed or complex tool, but this has really been pretty instrumental in getting all these meshes into the game. And once we have the FBX file converted into meshes that are compatible with the toy engine, then we create simulation objects out of it, which is what we see all in here. So here's that mushroom brought into the simulation object editor. So this is how I basically have been creating all these things. Just coming in here, creating files. I've created this new variety mesh component, which is kind of interesting. It's what allows us to do the thing where I drop a game object and it comes up different ways. So it's kind of like the mesh component, the difference being that it allows you to specify multiple meshes or multiple materials. There's a few different modes and stuff it can do. And it can randomize the orientation and do some scale variation. So it's real handy to create all that kind of variation stuff. And you can even preview all the different varieties it's going to produce. So now looking at these trees. So this first tree is kind of interesting. It's kind of strikes me as a swamp tree, honestly.
Oh yeah, I was about to mention that.
Definitely looks like an alchemy kind of thing.
Yeah, and some of these are plants that I actually thought of the typey names for them.
Right. Yeah. For some of these, yeah, you've already created typing names. These flowers look like a swamp flower, but again, I think they look kind of useful. Flowers here.
Oh yeah, these lotuses, like.
Yeah, that's what they. Okay. And I love these little pea pod kind of things like that. That just strikes me as great for cooking ingredient kind of thing right there. Now, with all of these, because they're commercial assets, they're not. I don't want to get too far into like adopting them exactly as is. So I kind of figure what we'll do is use them as inspiration, but also be willing to, in our minds, change a few things about them. And then down the road, maybe we will get an opportunity sometime to improve the mesh or change the mesh or the textures to kind of be a little closer to the lore we write. These little orange ones, and I have more of them over here, I actually developed a little bit of my own lore for these. I was thinking a few things about them. I was thinking we might make them different colors, have a bit of color variety. I was thinking they'd probably be edible and that they would kind of be like almost like a snack, like a little cake or something inside, like a mushroom cake. And I thought it would be really cool too if you ran over them with your character, if they would like squish or something. I like it when the world reacts to the player even just kind of like moving by. So I was kind of wondering if maybe we could do something like that, have them break apart or whatever. Some of these smaller ones I don't think we've discussed a whole lot. These little ones with the purple tendrils. These look like funny little potato kind of plants. They might be edible.
Yeah, many of these plants were like I thought of alchemical or like cooking uses for.
Yeah, these definitely look like some sort of like veggie. This one, I'm not sure. Did you have one for this giant? Like this is actually a really cool plant, I think. This giant bulb thing at the bottom and then the leaves coming up. We've got these, and I already gave these a light just because I wanted to see what they look like. So we've kind of joked that if you need a reading light, find one of these little swamp. I think you wrote these as kind of like a swamp plant, I believe. More bulbs. Oh, I love the chompy plants with the big blueberries. I'd love to try and find a way to animate those maybe, or make them spit at you or something, but then also have a valuable fruit.
So there's like a risk and a reward.
Yeah. Then we have these little things, I kind of call them the caterpillars. I don't particularly like them, but they might still have a purpose. I do like these big leaf plants. These here, I actually had some ideas for. I thought these here I was thinking would be kind of like Allen fake grass is what they had me thinking. And then over here I was kind of thinking this is our sisal wheat, perhaps. And there's one that's missing, but it looks like a little, kind of like a little, it's a tall grass that has this cotton thing. There it is. There's the one that was missing, actually. This is one I want to talk about. So this looks like it has almost like little balls of cotton or something in the end, which is really cool. I hope all of you found this interesting. There's a lot of brainstorming that still has to be done. And like I said, not all of these plants necessarily will be in the Northern Islands, but initially, probably most of them will, just to give us some variety to play with. So I'm looking forward to continue building. We've got a lot more things to bring in. We still have a bunch of coral to bring in, fish and insects to bring in. I know there's some palm trees and some other tree sets. So there's still quite a bit to port into the engine. And then we've got to start organizing all this in a wiki and giving everything names and descriptions, which is also fun. So I think that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I hope you found that interesting. And thank you, Loko, for joining me.
You're welcome. Have fun, everyone, and see you later.
All right. See you next time, everyone. Take care. A special thanks goes to this month's Patreon supporters. If you'd like to support the project, you can do so by visiting www.patreon.com/Antilia.